Hey, everybody, welcome to Open Hour for September 1st, SALT Project Community Open Hour, September 1. I am the SALT Community Manager, Jimmy Chunga. So happy to have you all here. Thanks for joining us. Let me bring up my screen here and we'll go ahead and we'll get started. All right. Give me one sec. Thanks for being here, everybody. Some of you, I guess I was talking to some of you thought we weren't going to be doing this today because we're in San Francisco. No, we're on it. Okay, SALT Project Community Open Hour, the first and third Thursday of every month. Here's where you can find us: YouTube, GitHub, Slack, Twitch, Reddit, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and of course the Hacks Podcast. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a couple of different things. Elisa's going to be helping us out with some changes to repo.saltproject.io. You can see it right there, and then we're going to be talking with Thomas Phipps, as we do every single week. So let's jump in here. Again, open hour every first and third Thursday, starting at 10 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Mountain. We'd like all of you to join. If you're watching via YouTube, this is a great opportunity for all of you to join us and chat with the SALT Project core team live, get all of your questions answered, talk with SALT Project community champions like Gary Geeson and Nick Hughes, and get every single one of those issues and challenges and questions that you have resolved. Our next SALT Project Community Open Hour is going to be on September 15th, so be sure to join us. I'd also like to invite you to join a SALT Project working group. There's a lot of them there. You can go to saltproject.io to learn more. Huge thank you to Dave Boucher and to Wayne Warner for being involved with our breakout sessions here at VMware Explorer. As you can tell, I'm in a hotel. We're in San Francisco right now for VMware Explorer. It's been great. It's been very cool for me to interact with a lot of people that are learning more about SALT and using terms like it's interesting for us because we're so close to SALT and have been for so long. A lot of people are just seeing it for the very first time here at VMware Explorer, and using terms like exciting and wow, this is amazing, and I'm going to jump in and start getting to know this right away. And they're doing that with both SALT and ITEM. So it's been a very positive experience. And so I want to give a big shout out to Wayne Werner. He's done a great job here, as has Dave Boucher and of course Tom Hatch. So it's been great. We announced on the last SALT Project Community Open Hour, which was, I think it was, the 18th of August, something like that. Anyway, a lot of you have questions about the switch from Tiamat to Wonder or Oneater, depending on how you want to pronounce it. There's a lot of you that have questions. We totally understand this. We had planned today to give you a deep dive and to really dig in and go through a lot of different stuff with the switch from Tiamat to Wonder. After talking with some members of the core team and after going through a couple of things, it was decided that we're going to push this back 1 week, or one open hour, I should say. So we're going to be tackling this on the next open hour on September 15th. Apologies to all of you. There's still some things that we're working through. There's still some things that we want to make sure that we're solid on before we sit down and do this deep dive. So much appreciated to everybody that's working on that project and working to make that as clear and as easy as possible, especially a shout out to DWAS for being the man on that project. Okay, so I think now would be a great time to throw it over to Elisa Rock. Elisa, this is your slide. Go for it.
All right, I might have to steal the share from you at one point, but let's keep this slide up for a moment.
Yeah, you got it. Yep.
But oh, and by the way, I did want to say that was a really clever that thing you do reference that you just made, and I caught it. I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So very good. All right, so as most of you know, I assume those of you who are attending this meeting know that we released a new SALT install guide with 3005. And so the 3005 install directions are now exclusively on that new SALT guide, which means they are not on repo.saltproject.io, which is where the install directions used to be. So I want to first off just let everybody know, don't worry, repo is not going away. Repo will still host the salt packages, and that's not going to change. However, once the new 3004 install directions migrate to the new install guide, we wanted to do it before the release. It just didn't happen. I can explain why if you really want to know. It's not super important, but had to do with version selectors. But we'll migrate the 3004 install directions to the new install guide. I don't think I'm going to migrate the 3005 because that one is leaving support at the end of this month. And so I don't want to go through the work of migrating it just to have it go away immediately. And then once we've migrated the 3004 install directions, the homepage on repo.saltproject.io will change. So now I'm going to still the share just to show people how to navigate to the new salt install guide, because there's been some confusion about that. And I'm going to show you where to find the information that you're going to see on the salt install guide. And I'll show you a preview of what we're planning for repo.saltproject.io. I need you to stop sharing for just a second, Chunga. Then I'll steal it from you. Thank you. Okay, just a second. So here is your good friend, repo.saltproject.io. Hopefully we've put like this nice big button that should hopefully help you find your install directions. So when you click that, it takes you to the new salt install guide. No surprises there. One thing to be aware of that is not quite ideal is if you click on a tab, that button goes away. But if you scroll up, you'll still see it. I wish I could fix that, but it's just kind of a feature of how the anchor tags work on repo. So be aware that that's how you can get to the salt install guide, or, bookmark it and find it that way. You can also get to it from the homepage. Oops. Let's see. If you go to the homepage, you can click this link here. That will also take you there. So that should work. So this is what the install guide looks like. And then you can see all the manual install by directions stuff right here. If you click on like this downloads thing, it also kind of gives each OS and with a click link to its install directions and things like that. And you can still like browse the repo for packages as needed. So that's how you can kind of find the stuff that you need. I think you're gonna like our new design for the repo homepage, where we need to move off of the tech stack that repo is using for its homepage and integrate it with the rest of the docs tech stack that we're using for all the other salt docs. So that's part of the motivation there. This is, I worked on this landing page in consultation with people like Dave Boucher and others who are salt experts and are used to using salt regularly and interacting with people who use salt regularly. And hopefully this will just make it nice and easy you can get to the general guide there if you need an explanation of what's the difference between Wonder and Classic, Oneater versus Classic. You could do that. And then here we've got every operating system. And rather than having kind of those tabs that you have to click on to get to the install directions, you can just come right here and say, which one do I want? CentOS 9, CentOS 8, and it'll jump you right to where you need it. And look, there's all the stuff you need right there. So hopefully that experience will be better. I wanted to have that experience in place by 3005, but thanks to version selector issues, we were able to get that up and running for 3005, but at least the install directions are there, and hopefully that'll be a good experience. Sorry, we're in this awkward transitional stage for, a couple weeks while we're migrating the 3004 docs, but hopefully in the end, it'll be a good experience for you. So that's it for me.
Bravo. Let's hear it for Lisa Rock, ladies and gentlemen. Outstanding. Good job. Thank you very much. All right, let's send it over to Thomas Phipps with our community forum. Say, Thomas.
Hey, I actually can't believe I have to say this. Don't put secrets in the state file tree. Had a user trying to figure out how to clear the cache from or keep files from being pulled from the file server to the cache because they have secrets in their state file tree. And it's like, you don't want to put your secrets in the state file tree to begin with. If you're worried about the cache, a user that can read the cache can query the minion to begin with. So the minion's already lost at that point. But any minion can read any file in the state tree. So if you have secrets in there, it's pretty much over, because anyone could get anything from the state tree. If you need secrets, that's what pillar is for, because you can direct what minion can see what pillar there. And there wasn't another issue that came up that I didn't get into here.
While you're thinking about that one, the one thing that I would add to your comment is don't use environments to try and separate things between minions either, right? Like, you know, if you're thinking that, oh, you know, my dev system can't query the prod information or something like that because it's in a different environment, it doesn't really work like that, right? Like if it's on the same master, it can query other environments just as easily, so don't rely on that.
Exactly. Yeah. The state file tree, there is nothing that can keep anything from querying any part of it. What was the other issue I was going to talk about? I can't remember.
Well, we can always come back to it in the queue. There we go. Never mind.
The bootstrap script. It's kind of a warning. There is a problem with 3005 Wonder and the bootstrap script. If you just leave off 3005, it'll work fine. But if you tell the bootstrap script Wonder and then 3005 on Ubuntu, at least, it will have problems installing. It will error out saying that it can't do the Wonder depths. We're currently looking into it. I don't think there's a fix out yet for it, but just leave off the. Oh, sorry, I just saw comments. But yeah, if you're installing Wonder with the bootstrap script, just leave off the 3005 until we get that fixed. So.
Is there an issue for that?
Yes, I had in the bootstrap repo is 1861. Yeah, I had the user that was running into that, open that up. But I just thought I'd get a warning out there for people running into that now. So that's all I got.
All right. Well done, Thomas. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated, as always. All right. It is that blessed and coveted time of Salt Project Open Hour. It's time for our Q&A, or as we call it, Nick time, maybe Gary time. I don't know. What do we have today?
I don't know, Gary, you want to go first?
I am surprisingly without questions today.
I got plenty. So I just dropped a link to essentially what is my listing of open pull requests, and I'm just gonna work through them. So this is sorted from most recent to not, and the first four I think are pretty good to go. I had to rerun a test on one of them, but hopefully that's going to come back green. I don't think anybody's laid eyes on them yet, so if anybody has some extra cycles, I would appreciate some love on those. And then the two at the bottom, they are 62447 and 62295. Those I think warrant a little bit of discussion. So if we have some folks on that want to chime in, especially from the core team, definitely appreciate it. So starting with 62447, essentially this is some functionality that was suggested by one of my customers, and I know that it's kind of on the line of whether this is something that's reasonable that anybody could use, and something that's specific to a specific customer implementation. However, I think that the pros outweigh the cons on this one. Essentially, what it does is allows somebody to set a minion option that changes the behavior of certain states that allow for it. So this particular option would say like, hey, if you happen to be running in chroot, act like everything's fine and run a service action clean, without actually taking action. And the main reason that the customer wants to do this is that they have a ton of states in their file system, right? Like absolute ton. So the alternative here is to wrap every single one of their service state blocks in Jinja that checks for true behavior. And it's a lot, right? We're asking to, go through a large amount of files in order to add this functionality. And, it's also adding some complexity for other folks that might want to implement this type of functionality in the future. So, I think that it's probably a worthwhile thing to include. It's not something that's going to be a default where that behavior is going to just occur, right? So I think it's giving a useful option to people who might have it, even though it's a small edge case. I think that it's a worthwhile add. So looking for input here. I know that there was a pushback from the community, and Megan said that she was going to ask around on the core team, and Shane put in an approval, which I then had to dismiss because I pushed another commit afterwards. But does anybody have any feedback on that one?
I would say that I would like to look at it a little bit more before providing feedback. I do share Orange Dog's concern about just how useful this is overall, and are there better ways of doing it? I can't say for sure one way or another though right now. But I will look at it and I'll comment on the PR at some point.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just need to know what direction I'm going to go, right? Like if the customer is going to implement something that's specific to their environment that gets them over this hurdle, or if we can get it into the open source.
I kind of go along with Orange Dog, but my concern is more options causing more confusion. And when pretty much this can already be taken care of with Jinja directly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it's not possible, right? Like I sort of led with the fact that it is possible in Jinja. It's labor intensive, and I tend to fall in the category of like having more switches to pull is helpful to me. Like if it simplifies the YAML implementation, right? Like a lot of what we get in Salt versus other configuration management platforms is that it's too complex, right? Like we open up our Salt states, which should be nice, pretty YAML files, but instead they're like a mess of Jinja because we always have to work around stuff in templating. And so this pushes the logic back into the code base so that we can have less Jinja and more, somewhat static YAML files. So, I think that it's at least worth considering.
Could it possibly be expanded to be run to use this option within containers also? For my purposes, I've run a lot of states inside of containers, like service states, for example, and there's no service daemon, there's no system D running inside a container. And I kind of think of a container as kind of a specialized chroot environment. Is that a possibility or something to consider?
Yeah, I mean, we could, if it seems like this would be useful, but making it a little bit broader, instead of having it like a chroot ignore option, which is what I have right now, potentially what I could do is make it a list of like virtual subtype grains or something like that it could match in order to turn on or off that functionality. So instead of passing like true false, we could pass chroot and container or whatever it shows up in the subtype. And in those scenarios, it would just jump the service state and say like, okay, I'm not going to do anything.
Thank you.
Could you not just have a state that checks for chroot and then have like a only if or a conditional?
Yeah, but again, it would have to reference every single state, right?
Yeah, you would have to modify your states, but you wouldn't have to wrap it in a Jinja block. You could use one of the global conditionals, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that would get us around the mess of Jinja versus straight YAML, but it's still a heavy lift when you're talking about a very large state file system.
I just to weigh in on this, I can understand your use case here, but I share everyone else's concerns that it's specific to one. It's a global option that's specific to one state module. That kind of gives me pause.
Yeah. So the current need, right, is with service stuff, but I feel like other state modules could certainly adopt this. And so if there's some functionality that needs to be skipped in multiple ones, it would just be a matter of like, okay, we're going to leverage this existing option in order to do it. And right. I think I wrote the docs to that effect, right? Like any supported state module could use this.
Right, but I think that, sorry, I'm just going to say that's the bit that concerns me, because we've had things in the past that have been in specific modules, and it's the initial implementation was like, hey, this will be great, this will be a great feature for this specific module, and then later down the road someone realized, oh hey, I could use this in this other one and this other one, and then we're at a point where like we're yanking everything back to make it more global. So I think my preference here would be to start from that point. If this is something that is deemed useful, to try and start from that perspective rather than from the service state specifically.
I think it is global, isn't it?
The setting is global. The config option is global, but
right.
I don't see, like the changes, it's adding this chroot ignore option to all of the functions in the state module, the service state module. I think the one I'm thinking of is one of the requisites, or it might have been like mod aggregate or something along those lines, where it was added specifically to one or two individual state modules, and then later moved to like the larger state system.
And
It seems like there's got to be a more generic way of doing this, and that is what we're after, is the more generic way of doing this. Again, though, I haven't dove in deep enough to really be able to say one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to other implementations. I'm just looking for outcomes, right? So like, as long as whatever thing we settle on solves the problem, then I'm game for whatever that happens to be, as long as like the difference between level of effort isn't enormous, right? And just like writing huge swaths of code into the core. Cool. Yeah. So if you folks wanted to take a look at it offline and put some feedback in that PR, I would appreciate it. And then the only other one that I have is 62295. And I think that the general consensus in the comments is that this is something that we'd like to pursue. It's basically trying to fix some slowness with the matching modules, because they invoke the loader every single time they're called. So if you have some interesting workflows where you're doing like a compound match inside of like a Jinja loop or something like that, and iterating over a large amount of matching conditions, each one of those is going to invoke the loader, and it can get pretty slow pretty quick. The initial fix was direct imports, which sort of breaks the ability to load matchers and override existing functionality. So I did a little bit of digging, and the only thing that I could really think of was to put a dunder in place that is like dunder matchers and loads the matchers up the same way that we do with dunder salt, and throws the modules in there. Pedro chimed in and said that he'd rather not have another dunder. I think probably because he's trying to kill dunder utils right now, right? But I can't really think of any other real way to like say, hey, okay, you know, we've loaded the matchers, now we can reference them and we don't have to load them at every call. So if anybody has different ways to do it that doesn't involve a dunder, or wants to, you know, chime in and say like, no, this is the way to do it, that'd be cool. I'm just looking for a way forward on that. This one's been open for a little while, and I'd like to get it resolved sooner rather than later.
So the root of this issue is, if I understand it right, if you have like a large state run and you're using matchers, the matchers get loaded each time.
Yeah, so it's like specifically, I have a customer that has this like Jinja loop where they're like pulling in maps and doing like on the fly matching. It's kind of like an interesting use case, but during that they're like, this is taking forever. And so we dug into it a little bit, and yeah, like match.compound basically invokes the loader in order to load matchers every time it's called. So they don't just like load once like other things do. So you know, if you're doing a direct import, it speeds it up quite a bit. You know, I put actual stats in there for where I was testing it. But you know, we don't want to break the ability for people to, I guess, override the existing matchers. I think that's what it would. That's what it would
I actually would not be opposed necessarily to a dunder. My first thought at looking at this is like just cache the matchers somehow, and adding a dunder would basically achieve that. So I think that's something we should consider rather than doing the direct import. Is you know, just load the matchers, do the loading once or less.
Okay. So I did like a real brief proof of concept to that. Maybe I'll put that and switch around the implementation in the PR, and that way everybody can sort of like take a look at it and go from there. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Since Pedro's not here, I feel like one of us could safely speak for him and say all sorts of bad stuff. But no, I think his concern about adding another matcher, it's the same concern about like why he wants to kill out dunder utils. Dunder utils is very easy to abuse, and it's a hack. So if we could somehow make it so that like if there is a dunder match or matchers or whatever it ends up being called, if there's some way to prevent it from being abused, or if it's like specific use cases, kind of like those specific guidelines, I think he probably could be convinced to allow it in. And barring that, I think like DWAS's suggestion, that was exactly what I was thinking too, just some way to cache the matchers so they're not getting loaded and called every time.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought on that is like was sort of, I wonder if there's a way to do that in the loader. But I'm not sure about that. That might be a little bit too much to bite off. But yeah, definitely just load, like doing the loading less rather than the import.
Okay. So I'll take a crack at that. The one thing that I did note in the PR was that I was starting to look at like what the tests would look like as well, and it became apparent pretty quickly that PyTest salt factories would need to be extended to recognize matchers as a legitimate dunder. So
I mean, I guess that's part, like another question we should ask is, do we actually want matchers to be able to be overridden or not? Like, what is the value there? Do people do that today?
Yeah, I mean, CR seems to think so. I've never heard of anybody overriding matchers, but I guess he had written the original functionality in a while back. So I mean, if you wanted to ping him and get his take on it.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where, if I remember right, it's similar to like modules and states, you can provide your own custom matchers. They're like SRV salt matchers, maybe underscore matchers.
You can, but I've never understood how to call them. That was always the.
Well, if you had a dunder matchers, then you would be able to call them
Within scripts, but not from like the CLI.
Oh, right.
Well, I think the reason we're getting rid of utils is because of race conditions, when the minion itself is starting, and when is utils loaded and when not. Whereas the system would be up by the time you're using matchers, right? There's not going to be a issue there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, dunder utils is a hack.
Yeah, there's many reasons to get rid of dunder utils, but I don't know about all this mattress stuff. Maybe it makes sense to do the dunder, but I can't say for sure.
Okay, well, I'll at least put the dunder matcher solution out there, and I guess then that'll sort of like push us to either make a decision or shift again.
I mean, just off the top of my head, and I'm sure D Wells will correct me if I'm horribly wrong here. But I wonder if within, not necessarily in the matcher's code itself, but within the modules, I wonder if like loading them into and then looking for them in something like dunder context. And if it's already there, then you just read it out of there. Would be a solution.
I do that in LGPO module a lot. I cache stuff.
There's a few places that we've done it.
Yeah, that might make sense as a caching option for sure.
So is that something that we want to take a crack at first? Like I can mock that up and put it in the PR.
I think that
see
would
if
be
that's like a
better.
happy medium.
Yeah, that would be better than going after the dunder matchers.
Okay. Cool.
And there's
I'll give that
probably
a
a
shot.
Pi, there's probably a PyTest factory support for that as well.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for the input.
All right, is there anything else? Nick, we're good?
Think we're good.
All right, anybody else have any questions? I'm just
Sure.
realizing. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, my first time in one of these meetings, so apologies if I'm speaking out of turn. Just was curious how to give a little nudge for a PR that has fixes for Salt Cloud Driver along with test cases.
Can you tell us the PR number?
Yeah.
Sure, 62559.
And while they're pulling that up, Peter, you're welcome anytime, man. That's what this is for. So you're never
Yeah.
speaking out of turn.
Great, thank you.
Proxmox.
Sorry, that was 62259 or
62559.
oh, 2 5s.
Yep. I just kept hitting a speed bump after speed bump as I was trying to deploy something. Like, oh, I need to fix that. Oh, need to fix that. Oh, need to fix that too.
Yeah, we'll make sure. I'm gonna add the 3006 label for this so it doesn't get lost. So I'll make sure that gets reviewed.
Thank you.
All right, anything else for Peter?
That's it for me. Just listening and learning.
Gotcha. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, regrettably, Wayne is here in San Francisco, and I did not ask Shane at the beginning of the meeting.
Well, I took it upon myself to whip out my
All
old
right.
dad joke book.
There he is, always prepared. Shane, if there's no other questions, then we'll go ahead and we'll call it a day. So Shane, a joke if you would, sir.
Not a question, but a quick comment of disappointment that you didn't drag Wayne in to be on camera for the joke, Chunga.
I should have. I
missed opportunity.
I was with him all day yesterday. I should have said, "Hey, you still need to be here." So I think he's in a meeting. I have no idea. That's just me trying to cover for him. But there is no excuse, Wayne. Well, I think we should all haze him or something in the next open hour for not being here. All right, Shane, go ahead, sir.
Well, my wife is always telling me what to do. But when she told me to stop being a flamingo, well, that's when I put my foot down.
I'm excited to get Wayne back. Shane Lee, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for him. He's here all weekend. There you go. All right, everybody, have a great Labor Day weekend. Be safe. Thanks to all of you for attending, especially you, Peter, for the first time. Always welcome. And we will see you week after next for our next Salt Project Community Open Hour. Thanks, everybody. Bye.